Let's get cozy and chat and have an honest conversation about mental health. I think I really started struggling with my mental health probably when I was like 12 or 13. That's the first time I remember being depressed and having suicidal thoughts, and I don't think at that age that I really truly understood that it was depression and mental health and not something else. During that time, I was going through a really hard time personally with my parents' divorce, and I do think that that might have been a catalyst for those feelings that I started having. And then I think I started feeling a little bit better, and the feelings of depression became easier to ignore. That is until 2020 hit and COVID came. I was a freshman in high school when COVID hit, and being isolated in the house and kind of missing out on being able to see friends, and my high school experience was very hard for me. And I think throughout the year 2020, being isolated inside the house, my depression definitely got worse. Of course, I was waking up to do school online and, kind of just going through the motions. But at that point, I was inside my house. I didn't have friends. I wasn't going out. I wasn't going to football games. I wasn't going to dances like every other person my age. And that really caused a downward spiral to really where my mental health is today. And after the schools had opened up after COVID, when it was safe enough, I never went back. I switched to online school and continued to isolate myself until I ultimately dropped out and got my GED. I think at that point, I was just committed to isolating myself even more. I felt like, what was the point of going back? I have no friends there. I didn't really see the point, and ultimately I think it was very detrimental to my mental health. And that leads us to where we are today, 5 years after 2020. I would say that I am definitely depressed, isolated. I don't really go out. I don't really have friends. And I would say that I definitely struggle with passive suicidal thoughts, which, for those of you that don't know what they are, that's basically when, you wouldn't plan to unalive yourself. But if you got in a car crash, you wouldn't care. If you got, if something happened and you ended up dying, you wouldn't care. And that's definitely where I'm at. Another example of that would be like if I went to bed and didn't wake up, you wouldn't care. And looking back on it, I think when I was 13 and started struggling, that was probably the first warning sign. And then with COVID, I just continued to isolate myself. But I'm here, I'm still fighting, even though there are some days that I really don't want to. But I wanted to make this video because I wanted, anyone who feels like me or is just going through something and struggling with their mental health to know that they're not alone.